Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gridiron and Growth, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of business and sports champions. And Benny and I are thrilled to have Angel Johnson, CEO and founder of ICONI, as well as an Air Force veteran who was one of the first 100 Black women to graduate from the famed Citadel. Please welcome Angel Johnson.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you both doing?
We're doing great. And you told us before the call, let's just start out with the good news. Today is your 4-year anniversary of ICONI, an athleisure brand that it motivates, inspires, and teaches others, as well as gives back 10% of everything you own. You give back to nonprofits. What's it feel like to be celebrating your 4-year anniversary?
It finally feels like I have reached, I think, a level. I feel like a CEO this year. I think 2022 was like my first year I really stepped into it after being a military officer and just feel like I was moonlighting as a CEO. But I really feel like, wow, I really learned a lot in 4 years and, built a brand with, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not an influencer. I barely even had like social media, if we're talking about that, before I even started my brand. So to be able to do this is amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You said it took you 4 years to feel like a CEO. Can you talk a little bit about that journey in terms of how you've built this company and just now feeling like a CEO? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So my first year when I started my business, I was still in the military. I was still in the military for my first 2 years of business. So that was my full-time job. I was going to work at, 6 o'clock in the morning and getting up at 3 and then taking a break and then doing ICONI stuff. So, I still had this full-time responsibility, which was my number one responsibility because the military at all times reminds you they're your number one responsibility. So then transitioning out the military and doing this full time, it was really the first time I think in my life where I told people, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to feed myself. There's no mom. There's no military. Because I even went to a military college. So I was used to that kind of discipline and that structure. It's like, I'm literally doing this for myself. I am so scared. So,
Hey.
and then just as the years gone on, not just leading myself, having to lead other people outside of the military. So now when I have employees or partners or manufacturers I work with, it's me setting the vision. And a lot of times in the military, all the time in the military, it's the general or the colonel setting the vision for you. So it's like, oh, I not only have to set the vision, I have to help other people understand what the vision is and help them execute it. So it was a much different experience for me.
What helped you the most in that transition to build the successful company ICONI has become?
What helped me the most was just leaning on the stuff I had already known about the military and what I learned in the military. I went through a major identity crisis because since I was 18, I've been prepping my whole life just to do 20 years in the Air Force. I didn't think of anything else. I never had a resume. I never had a LinkedIn because I was like, I'm going to be an Air Force officer through and through. But then when I finally reached my 8-year mark and I was like, this is not something I may want to do for the rest of my life. I was like, what do I want to do? But the transition, I think leaning on the things I know about from the military, like, hey, if you want to learn something, research it. So that's the first thing I did. I like ICONI is like, people ask me, how did you learn how to do that for ICONI? It's like, I just researched it. And they're like, oh, you didn't talk to anybody? I was like, no, not too much later on when I probably could have.
Well, I want to stay here for a second. And I promise we'll talk about ICONI as soon. And everybody visit iconi.com, ICONI.com. But you were one of the first 100 Black women to graduate from the Citadel. What in the world was that experience like?
Crazy time. So, yeah, like in high school, I was really big into JROTC. I was one of those nerdy kids. I always had the little pickle uniform on. And then my Army colonel, who was my instructor, he actually went there in the 70s before women were even allowed to go there. The first Black woman actually didn't graduate until 2002. So this is very recent.
Whoa.
The Mag 7. So, he encouraged me to go. He's like, you should go to the Citadel. No, I'm not going. I'm going to go to University of South Carolina. And he was like, oh, well, you should just go. It's just, so I got a lot of pressure to keep on going. And then I ended up going. It was a culture shock because back then, I sound like, back then, but they changed the rules since women had to cut their hair like super short. You could only have like 3 inches on top. And it was just like hell on earth. But just like the the fun and the experience I've had there. Like I'm meeting like colonels from the British intelligence agency. Like I don't need those people, like, or we'll probably never cross paths with people, but it's just a cool experience. Just learning how to navigate life.
Yeah, let's even go. Yeah, let's go even deeper down this conversation right here in terms of the university that you went to, Citadel. Is there one conversation, one moment that really sticks out with one of these colonels, or one of these conversations that really sticks out in terms of, wow, that was incredible?
Well, I think the biggest piece of advice that helped me from that experience, the whole college experience, is what one of my favorite Air Force ROTC professors, Major Mosley, he always used to tell me, bloom where you're planted. And so that helped me as I went to middle Texas, Abilene, Texas, or San Angelo, Texas, where it was just a Walmart and there was nothing else to do. Or when I went to the Middle East, or, in starting a business, always bloom where you're planted. I tell people I can thrive under any circumstance and there's nothing I can't do. That's how I carry myself through life.
Make sure everybody writes that down. Bloom where you're planted.
Yeah. Bloom where you're planted. I love it. Well, let's go back in time. 4 years ago, you're still in the Air Force. You decide to start ICONI, a new athleisure brand. What went into that decision?
Well, I used to work out on the base gym. And one time, it was just one time I had this random experience. I was working out and then one of my friends came up to me and he was like, hey, I don't know what type of leggings those are, but I can see, everything you got going on in those leggings. I was like, oh no, I'm at the base gym. Like, this is so embarrassing. And I was like, dang, I can't wear these leggings anymore. So I just tossed them in the trash. I don't think it became a thought. And then I used to work these night shifts when I first got to Colorado. We used to either work from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. And when it was one of my 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. days, I think I was frustrated with the Air Force. I was like, what would I do outside the Air Force? And I was like, I don't know. And then one day I was just like, hey, I would want to start an athleisure brand or activewear brand. I love that. And that's something I would love to do. And it's something that I can help other people not experience the same frustrations I have experienced with when it comes to activewear. And I remember turning to Sergeant Singer and I was like, hey, I'm going to start an activewear brand. He was like, it's 2:00 in the morning. We've got 2 more hours. Just calm down. So just learning on this journey, I've learned so much about like how to manage people, how to manage my business. And like, I really have appreciated the journey, like where I am now. So I have a COO, which is really interesting how I met her. It's like all these things just happened to fall into place. She actually came from Brazil. And when she first got here, you can't work if you're in school, but she had all this experience working at Brazilian activewear brands. She was so invested in the business as my mentor. And I was like, hey, do you want to be my COO? And she said, yes. And I was like, boom, got a COO that knows everything about activewear. And where we are now is just continuing to grow. Like this is probably going to be one of our biggest years. We're trying to release 6 new collections this year, which we haven't ever done before. So I think we've really expanded our operations. And then this is the first year that we've been funded. So we got outside capital last year, impact investment. And so, how does that change the scope of business? So, but it's definitely been a roller coaster. Actually, last year was my toughest year for business because of everything personal. I became a full-time caregiver and I actually had to run ICONI from hospitals for 4 months as I was trying to take care of my parents and manage all of that. But I was able to get my first investment from the seat of a hospital couch, and then just carry the business. But it's been people like Karen, my COO, and, my manufacturers looking out for me, and just the team of models and photographers I work that have helped carry the business, even when I've experienced like my own personal lows.
Angel, would love to just now even go even deeper into the mindset. Number one, from coming from a military background, being a Black woman in business, now the mindset of getting your first investment, but then also taking care of your parents while running a business. Can you just double click on your mindset?
I think my mindset definitely comes from my mom. Like I've seen her work 3 different jobs and give me everything I wanted growing up. It's definitely like a spoiled kid growing up. My mom is like a workhorse. She works. But at the same time, she would always make time to like, hey, we're going to go to a soup kitchen. We're going to do toys for tots. You need to make sure you set up a certain amount of your clothes and your toys away, not just the bad ones, because you're going to give it away, because you have to learn to give into the world as the world has given to you. So I think that's where the mindset has. But like, I think I'm very lucky. My mom was never my first bully. I know people say their parents are their first bully, but my mom, even though I was a a Black woman, Black girl living in the South, my mom never raised me with a glass ceiling. So I used to like, I've had like, they still have like my parents have like things on their fridge where I'm like, they're like, what were you going to be when you grow up, Angel? And I was like, first Black woman president of the United States. So it was like, I never had a glass ceiling. There was nothing that my parents or my family told me I couldn't do. I remember telling like my old Southern grandma, I was like, I'm not cooking for Thanksgiving or Christmas because I'm going to be president, and presidents don't cook. And they actually went with it. I was so surprised. Like my cousins are like, I don't know how you got away with that for years. I was like, yeah, because I think there's the strong mindset and the support from my family. So my family never capped me. So I never thought, hey, there was a limit for Black women. I mean, I saw that more as I got older and saw what some of the world, but just my thing is like, nothing can stop me. That's what I've been telling myself. Like, nothing can stop me. Like, I built this business from nothing. I got through the Citadel. I got through the Air Force. Like, when I was in the Air Force, I was the only Black woman officer all the time. Like, I went to Afghanistan. Like, what can stop me? I just shown that I can continue to do whatever I say I want to do. So what's going to change?
Wow. That's incredible. I was going to go somewhere else, but you mentioned that the mindset and battling through. You've been a part of an organization. Benny and I have too, but yours is greater in the military. So many different types of people, so many different, backgrounds, ways of life, and yet leadership may not look that same way as the rest of the organization. What are 3 things an organization can do? And I believe you called it culturally sensitive, just to be culturally aware of your employees. What are 3 things companies or institutions can do to really make an equal opportunity, not necessarily an equal outcome for those people in the institutions?
I just think recognize that we all come from different backgrounds. So one of my mentors in the Air Force, she told me about this book. It's called The Loudest Duck. And it talks about how introverts are a lot of times overlooked. And then it also talks about like how what we call biases, you can think about it's things our grandmas told us. So we all bring our grandma's opinions to the table, but we need to realize that we all have different grandmas. And then we also have to notice that the loudest duck in the room, which is usually in those military and athletic and, police type environments, the loudest duck is usually the one people are like, oh, that's the best leader because they're the loudest. But they're not a lot of times. They're just loud. So I think, one, just recognizing that people have different backgrounds. 2, you can lead with empathy while holding people to a standard. I know people don't think they go hand in hand, but they definitely do. And then I think 3, just like really just tuning into what's going on in the world. I remember one of the biggest slaps in my face, I think, was like in 2020 when everything with Black Lives Matter was happening. Our commander at the time, he sent out an email and it had like these people protesting, and they had signs, but they were funny signs. There was like when people were protesting like at a college about like a coffee shop. And I was like, hey, that's like, I get it. It can be funny, but do you think this is the right time to send it out? Like when I'm struggling, other people are struggling. Like we're wearing a uniform every day, but we're seeing our people on TV get treated differently. I was like, no, this is probably not the best time. And then sending stuff out like that when we were deployed, like, hey, yeah, I get that we were deployed. We all bleed, blue or whatever when we're deployed. But at the same time, we're seeing people at home that look like us while we're overseas. So
how do you lead with empathy and still set a standard?
So in the Air Force, for example, we have we have a physical fitness assessment every year. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows the standard. Like I had an example of one time, an airman came to me maybe a week before the test and said, I'm going to fail the test. So now I was like, well, you knew the standard was the standard. So now let's find a way in a week to at least get you to a different level. But presenting to them like, hey, if you fail this test, you're probably going to get a letter of counseling or a letter of reprimand. That's the standard. I still care about you as a person. I still care about your personal issues. We can help push your tests back. We can help get you in shape for your tests more. I'll run with you. But letting them know after they fail the test, if they did fail the test, in this particular case, you failed the test, you're not a bad person. you're not a failure. You just failed the test.
I would love to dive into, go back to ICONI now and talk about, just the way, everything, if somebody buys something, 10% of it goes back to nonprofits. And I know you said earlier in the show that comes from your mom and wanting to give back, or, hey, going to make sure you give back. Talk a little bit about that. And did that start right when the business started, or how did that just all come about in terms of giving 10% back of profit to nonprofits?
It started right from the beginning. It's definitely been a challenge because not every quarter of the business you're going to be profitable, but our nonprofit partners understand that. If they reach out, I'm like, hey, I can't support you this quarter. But I've also been bashed for it from when I've gotten advice from potential investors. They're like, you can't do that right now. You got to wait till you're making billions to be doing something like that. And I was like, well, why can't we just start small to help our community? Because people didn't understand, during COVID, giving $1,000 check to a nonprofit organization, it could change whether they stayed open during COVID or not, or the services they provided during COVID. So yeah, I get that from my mom and wanting to instill those, but just helping out, just seeing what it does to help out people. We made these shirts, these ambitious shirts, and it had what the definition of being ambitious was. And we gave them the clothes to kids for Denver. And all the shirts were gone within the first hour. They called, they're like, oh, the kids love this shirt. They want the shirt again. I was okay, I have to make some more shirts. But just seeing their face, and there's a brand new piece of clothing. And I was just I was okay, that's something cool. I would have never thought. And then just having different nonprofits reach out hey, I was hey, maybe I can only give you $500, or, I can't, I'm splitting this up to help other nonprofits. They're like, no, that's okay. Because a lot of nonprofits, we tend to think of big charities where, the CEO gets massive amount of money, but there's so many different community grassroots organizations that need our help.
We know you're a dreamer just based off of what you said earlier in the show. And, your parents never put a cap on you. And you talked about being the president of the United States, and
you got our
things. Exactly. All the things that you want to achieve. Now, putting you on the hot seat, where are you taking ICONI and yourself in the next 10 to 20 years?
Next 10 to 20 years, ICONI is going to be $1 billion activewear brand. And we're going to be headquartered out of Denver. Maybe in 20 years, I won't be the CEO. Maybe I'll just be somewhere else.
Chairwoman.
Yeah, chairwoman.
Yeah.
But I definitely, in 10 to 20 years, we're going to have programs with rehabilitation centers in the Denver Aurora metro area. And we'll be the business that helps transition people and give them their first stability back into normal life. We'll have employees based in Denver. And then I also want to make sure we have a group of manufacturers across the globe that are still focused on sustainability, human rights, and employee rights. And then I really want to have this culture of just fun. There's so many layoffs going on. And, I've never experienced that because I've only been in the military. Just the way certain corporations treat people. I want to just promote this culture of just the standard empathy, but also we can build this company in so many different ways and we can build it together. So I think that is my goal for ICONI, and continue to expand, whether it's our size range. This year, we're going to introduce some gender neutral clothing. So just always find a way to adapt and change and be more of the brand that we want to be.
Wow. That is phenomenal. Incredible. Yeah, I'm snapping. I want to work for you. I'm going to check the job openings on ICONI. All right, come on. Well, Angel, this has been truly incredible, inspirational, impactful, educational. Congratulations on your personal success and decisions, as well as the exponential growth of ICONI. No question, our listeners' favorite athletic wear brand now. ICONI, ICONI.com. You can find them. They've been mentioned in over 50 publications, the Bro Bible, Oprah Winfrey, all these things. Thank you so much, Angel, and congratulations.
Shout out to you, Angel. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.